In the summer of '69, I had drunk my way out of 3 universities. My wife was divorcing me, and I was unable to hold a job. So I figured I should do what every good alcoholic does, try a geographic change, because magically that will somehow help me stop drinking. So I went to visit my aunt and cousins in San Luis Obispo and said, I want to get a job in a radio station. Now, I had always loved radio from the time I was a little kid and listened to it, but I always turned it off when I got the Grand Ole Opry because I hated country western music. Well, I said, I'm going to be on the radio to my aunt and cousin, and I'm going to find a good station, and I'm going to go in and get a job. So it so happened I went down to Santa Maria, which was about 25 miles south of San Luis Obispo, where they had 5 radio stations and 1 television station for this 25,000 population town. And I saw the station letters on a building that was KZON. So I went upstairs to this kind of rickety radio station, and there was an engineer up there, and he said, we're doing a remote broadcast here this Sunday morning, so no one's here, but howdy. And I said, I'm here to get a job. And he said, well, you know, our morning disc jockey had a heart attack on the air Friday. And I know the owner is really desperate for someone to come in and be on the show. Take it over. Have you ever been on radio before? And I said, sure. You know? So I had gone to Columbia Broadcasting School for 4 hours, and I paid enough money to get my second-class license. And what that meant was you could run a soundboard by yourself. Someone else didn't have to be in the room. So I waited till Monday morning. I went on in and introduced myself and noticed that the owner was alcoholic as well. And I could smell the fumes. And he said, great, we'll start you tomorrow. We'll show you the board and show you around where everything is. So I started. In front of us, or in front of me and the disc jockeys, was a big board with 2 circular tables for the records, a microphone right in front of us, all the records behind and to the side of us. There was a teletype in the closet bathroom down the hall, and that was pretty much it. We were on the air, and KZON, your country cousin, was #1 out of the 5 radio stations in Santa Maria, had a built-in audience. So the first week I wasn't so bad. As my drinking continued, I went from worse to terrible. And I would stagger up the stairs. I opened the studio every morning, and at 6:30 in the morning, I would then flick the switches and be on the air, and almost unable to speak after a few weeks of doing this. Well, about 3 months later, the owner said, you know, why don't you go to the midday show? We'll get someone else to do the morning show for you. I thought, okay. So 3 more months or so of being terrible. He said, how would you like to sell radio advertising instead? I knew that was not going to work, but I had made some discoveries while I was living in Santa Maria in doing that work, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do this on my own. I'd gone to some 12-step meetings when I was living up in San Mateo and Mountain View. And I liked them, but I knew they weren't enough. I remember going to an AA meeting in Santa Maria, and this good old cowboy came up to me and was so happy to see me, greeted me, said hello. He brought a couple of other people over. They said hello. They said, come sit over here. We've got a speaker meeting today, and we'll go ahead, and then you can be introduced to other people afterwards. Well, I thought, well, okay. I haven't felt such a friendly greeting in quite a few months, so it was very, very welcome. Well, I realized that one of the great reasons that 12-step meetings worked was that they knew all the terrible things you had done when you were drinking or using drugs without you having to say a word. And they were delighted, they were glad to see you come in the door. That was not the experience I'd had for the last couple of years. And I thought, I can tell them all the things I've done, and in speaker meetings, that's what happens. But they know already, and for them, for the 12-step meeting, that's called qualifying. If you're going to speak and you want to talk about your experiences and why you decided to come to get help, you have to qualify, which means you have to say what you've done. That allows them to say, okay, yeah, you deserve to be here with us. Now, let's get started. Well, going to AA meetings, I could see really was not enough for me. But I wasn't sure what to do next. And I would be drunk and lying in bed on my studio apartment. And next door, I could hear this young couple. And the ceiling had not been sealed with the wall. They would come home at night and they'd talk with each other, laugh, giggle. I could smell the foods they were cooking. And it seemed so innocent and it seemed so happy. And I realized that's what I wanted. I wanted a relationship where someone was happy to see me and I could be happy to see them. And it was very clear that I was never going to get that unless I was worth it. I was never going to have a good relationship until I could provide a good relationship. I wasn't going to be welcomed by people until I could be a good friend. And at that point, I realized that wasn't going to happen in Santa Maria, but I needed to take this seriously, and I need to spend all my energy from that point forward trying to be a better person. Well, that didn't mean that I really did spend all my energy trying to be a better person after that, but it did mean that I went back up to San Mateo, and then to Agnew State Hospital for a month, where I was locked in with about 50 other guys. And I had a had to fight with a social worker to get to a group and get a referral so that I could get some help. Went into day treatment for a couple of months, realized that wasn't enough, and went into Mendocino State Hospital for 6 months for a program for recovery. There were 8 different programs on that campus, all very different, and I went around to each one of them. The last one I went into was called the Therapeutic Learning Community. And I talked to the social worker there, and he said, don't go into that one though. They're really weird people. And I said, okay, but I've gone everywhere else first, so let me try that. I walked up to the building. It was a 1-story building, opened a door, and it was kind of like a living room. People were sitting around talking to each other. And that was the only time in my life where I walked in, took one look and said, this is it. This is where I really need to be. And I worked very hard for the next 6 months in that program to try to take responsibilities, to follow through with what I said I would do, to help other people, and to accept help from the people in the program. From there, I had met a woman, and we decided that we were going to, when we felt ready, leave and help each other in our recovery and get jobs and begin to work in the recovery field. That worked out pretty well at first. A couple of years later, it was not working out so well, but for then it was. We got out. I began working at Goodwill Industries, and then we began volunteering at night at a program in the Mission in San Francisco, a street program where people would walk in off the street drunk. And we had set up 6 beds. They had chairs all around the walls. And we would try to refer people. We would listen to them, talk to them, and refer them to places where they could get treatment. We didn't have professional training, and we weren't counselors. We just listened and helped refer people. Well, before long, some more money was forthcoming for that program from Catholic Services, and I was paid to do that full time. I began reading everything I could, talking to everyone, doing this kind of work that I could. And one day, 3 men walked into the building where we were operating. It was a small grocery store that had gone out of business, and so it was just a storefront. And 2 of them were physicians, and one was a therapist, and said, tell me how you work here. And I told him. He said, would you be willing to come over to Oakland and help us set up a big program like this for people on the streets? I said, sure, if you hire my wife. And they did. So we went over there and set up a much bigger program. We had over 600 people a day walk in the doors. We were open 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And our job was to be a respite from the streets, to let people take a shower, use a bathroom, get clothing, and referrals. From there, I said, you have a really bad detoxification program here. It's very expensive. I can show you a design of a model that will be a lot cheaper and be a lot more effective. and give you twice as many beds. And they said, well, okay, go ahead, let's see what it looks like. I did, and it worked. From that point, I never had to really apply for a job. I got asked by different entities to go to work for them and design programs for them. Well, what did I learn when I was back trying to get sober, being a country western DJ? A couple of things. I learned that, like AA, if I was going to be successful, I better not prejudge the situation. I better take people at face value and assume something positive. I learned that I had to be a better person. I had to follow through with what I said I would do. I had to first think, how can I be helpful to other people? And I realized that the way programs worked were by turning everyone who walked in the door into being co-sumers. Instead of a producer or a consumer, we turn the people into co-sumers, which means you might go into an AA meeting thinking you're going to be fixed. But by the end of the day, you might give someone a ride home from the meeting. And 2 days later, you might get picked up by someone going to an AA meeting. But this time, you might have brought the coffee. That it genuinely was people helping other people with a plan. And 12-step programs have a plan. They're not plans so much about how not to drink, but they're how to be a better person, how to relate better with other people. So I began working in other programs in other areas in the Bay Area, realized I needed to go back to school, and that gave me an opportunity to go back and get a master's degree in healthcare administration services. And that's where I met Hurricane Jing, who taught the last class in the master's program. All of this happened, realizing how I might be a better person, becoming a consumer, knowing that I needed to continue to keep on doing it because I, for a brief time, was a country western disc jockey.